Hey everyone, and welcome to this Executive Briefing Explainer. I'll be your guide today as we unpack the Q2 2026 Business Environment Index for the United States. If you're a business leader, a planner, or really just someone trying to make sense of our current economy, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to break down all this complex data into clear, bite-sized takeaways so you know exactly what's happening, why it matters, and where the pressure is actually building.
So here's our bottom line upfront agenda for today. 1. The Q2 Executive Summary. 2. 5 core dimensions. 3. Constraints and interaction effects. 4. Early warning indicators. And 5. Our future scenario outlook.
All right, let's kick things right off with Section 1, our Q2 2026 Executive Summary.
Okay, here's the big number you need to know. The headline composite score for Q2 sits at 58 out of 100. Now, dropping into the upper 50s means we're in a highly monitored zone. It's not failing, right? But it's certainly not a booming green light environment either. A score of 58 basically tells us that business is absolutely still functioning, but it's facing some very real resistance.
To put that 58 into context, it means our current action band is defined as constrained with a softening trend. What does that actually mean for you? Well, it means that while business expansion is totally still possible, the overall growth of the economy has just slowed down. Job creation is pretty modest, and companies are facing some meaningful hurdles. It's kind of like trying to drive your car with the parking brake pulled up a few clicks. You know, you can still move forward, but man, it takes a lot more effort and a lot more fuel.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 5 core dimension scores.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the noticeable gap between the top and the bottom dimensions. Consumer demand leads the pack with a solid score of 63, and the workforce is hanging in there, stable at 62. So people are spending and jobs are fairly steady. But look at the bottom of the list. Capital is sitting at 55, and regulatory is really dragging at 52. In plain English, the desire for consumers to buy things is absolutely there, but the rules and the funding needed to supply those things are making it really tough for businesses to actually operate.
That brings us to Section 3, Constraints and Interaction Effects.
So what is actually holding businesses back right now? Well, it boils down to two massive roadblocks. The primary constraint is policy and cost uncertainty. Businesses simply don't have clear visibility on future rules, which makes long-term planning incredibly hard. And the secondary constraint? Restrictive capital. The target interest rate is hovering right between 3.50% and 3.75%. Because borrowing money is so expensive right now, businesses are just being way more cautious about taking out loans to grow.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because these problems actually feed off each other. Think about it. When you mix uncertain rules with expensive loans, the risk just becomes way too high. Businesses hit the pause button on their plans because the payoff just isn't there anymore. At the same time, when you mix infrastructure needs with that exact same expensive money, new construction weakens. It is simply too costly to fund new buildings right now. These issues literally multiply each other's impact.
And because of all these combined pressures, we're seeing a real slowdown in a metric we call capital velocity. This basically measures how fast money actually turns into new businesses and new jobs. Right now, that index is at 0.91 times. Anytime you dip below 1.0, it means the flow is slowing down. The money exists, sure, but it's moving sluggishly because leaders are just too hesitant to spend it.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 4, Early Warning Indicators.
First up on our radar is payroll. In June, we saw an expansion of 57,000 jobs. Now, on the surface, growth is always a good thing, right? But honestly, in the context of a robust, healthy U.S. economy, 57,000 is undeniably weak. It shows us that while companies aren't necessarily doing mass layoffs, they are being incredibly selective and super cautious about adding any new headcount.
Next, let's look at building permits, which dropped to 1.367 million. Permits are absolutely crucial because they're a leading indicator. They're basically a crystal ball for future construction. You can't build a new factory or a housing development tomorrow if you don't pull the permit today. So a drop here signals that future construction and capacity expansion are definitely slowing their pace.
And finally, we have core PCE inflation, which held at 3.3% year over year. This is the underlying rate of price increases. And honestly, 3.3% is just stubbornly high. As long as inflation stays sticky at this level, those high borrowing costs we talked about earlier, yeah, they aren't going to drop anytime soon. Now, as smart business leaders, you know we have to be totally transparent about the limits of our data. This briefing is built on 24 national indicators, but it heavily relies on advanced GDP estimates for Q2, and it incorporates some proxy data for June and July.
What does that mean? It means these numbers are early stage. They give us a fantastic directional compass, but they are absolutely subject to future revisions by the government as more concrete data rolls in. Finally, let's look ahead with Section 5, our future scenario outlook. We've modeled out 3 conditional planning cases. Remember, these are possibilities, not crystal ball predictions. Our base scenario keeps us constrained right where we are, at a score of 58. Growth is positive, but it's muted by high costs. Now, if inflation drops and borrowing money becomes cheaper, we hit our upside scenario, pushing the score up to a very healthy 66, where hiring and investment speed back up. But if inflation stays stubborn and credit tightens even further, we slide into the downside scenario. That drops our score to 47, putting us in an elevated risk category where consumer and business demand lose momentum at the exact same time.
So the next major shift depends almost entirely on whether inflation drops and credit conditions ease. The signs are mixed, and the friction out there is very real, which leaves us with the most important question for you and your teams today. As these variables shift in real time, is your business actually prepared for the next operating inflection point?
Navigating a complex environment with a score of 58 requires sharp focus and hyper-localized data. To make sure you're ahead of the curve, you absolutely need to visit creationunified.com for information on how to subscribe to their state and county level reports. All the incredible data and insights powering today's explainer were expertly developed by Creation Unified. Thank you so much for joining me for this briefing. Stay focused, stay prepared, and we'll see you on the next one.